So finishing out this series, there are basically three areas in a friendship with Jesus. If you're going to have a growing friendship with Jesus, which is what we're after as a church, growing friendship with Jesus, there's three areas, and we use language of treasure, table, and towel for those three areas. Treasure is the idea of this is kind of the vertical up-down friendship with Jesus. It's our personal relationship with Jesus, you might call it. And Jesus says that when we know him personally, that's like the greatest treasure there is and worth giving up everything to obtain. And then there's a table. Adam talked about that last week, the idea of gathering with others, living life with other people, also following Jesus and including more and more people at our table, growing together. So that's table. So you got treasure, you got table, and then there's towel. And that's the idea of serving and helping other people, doing something about something, the idea of the servant's towel. Jesus washed his disciples' feet in servanthood and dried them with a towel and said, now go and do likewise. And so symbolically, he's talking about serving others. And that's what we're talking about today. This is an interesting time of year in that it prompts a lot of questions and a lot of thought about our life. And so we typically, first of a new year, start to think about what do I want to be doing differently? Who am I becoming? What do I need to work on? What do we need to fix? And we set goals and think about changes and things like that. But I think that there's a lot of those questions we ask are reflective of something else that kind of stirs below the surface, that bubbles up. And then a lot of times we go through life maybe not labeling properly the question that we're really asking, and that is, does my life matter? And that's kind of maybe a morbid question at times, but it's like, is my life really accomplishing anything? Does my life matter? And sometimes we either try to shove that question away or distract ourselves from that question, or maybe we just misdiagnose the question. And we think in terms of like filling our schedule. Is my schedule full enough? Am I achieving enough? What's the next shiny thing that I want? Like we can distract ourselves, or maybe we just misinterpret the question. And my point is, there's this ache that we sense for something more, something deeper, and it's important that we properly diagnose what's going on so that we can respond to it, or else we just waste our life running after these other things. Because I think everybody knows, really, that God's not out for us to be productive for productivity's sake. And we want and we're made for more than just like dying with the best man cave or the most jaw-dropping closet. So Ephesians 2:10, this is an important Bible verse, and I talk about this a lot. It's important that we live with the concept in Ephesians 2:10 sort of ever in front of us and on the front of our minds. So here's Ephesians 2:10, really important verse. For we are God's handiwork. God is making us, God has made us and is continuing to work in us, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And so I'd like for you to just kind of take a good look at that and ask yourself, do I believe that this morning? Do you believe that this morning? Can you accept that this morning? Because this is God's truth spoken over your life. You are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus, wrapped up in Christ Jesus, to do good works which God has prepared in advance for you to do. You have calling. There are things as God looks at your life and as God formed you in the womb and birthed you, and I have these things for this person to go and do in this world. That is true of you, whether you believe it or not, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not. And what we're going to see is not only is that true for you, God expects you to fulfill the things that he has planned for you to do. So we got to deal with that. This is a spiritual fact. And I have a real love-hate relationship with this spiritual fact. Jesus never called people to live a safe life. He called people to live a meaningful life. Jesus never asked of me to live a safe life. Now, I would prefer if Jesus said, just be as safe as you can be, Alex. Like, that's where I'm happiest. Be as comfortable and as safe and as secure as you can be. I'm in. But he didn't call us to do that. He called us to live a meaningful life and a life of purpose. It's that whole Ephesians 2:10 thing where it's like the double-edged sword. Deep down, I really, really want to believe that God has created me to do some things for him. I think everybody does, right? Wouldn't it be like we want purpose? But that also means then that we got to do something. And it's probably not going to be completely comfortable because that's just not looking at the scriptures. If one thing stands out, it's God doesn't tend to call people to do things that they're super excited about and comfortable doing. He calls them and stretches them and shapes them and molds them, and it's through the discomfort that they come to know him and experience the life that he has for them. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about the villain of purpose, because the villain of purpose isn't failure, and it isn't weakness, and it isn't even like obvious sin. The villain of purpose is typically some kind of fearful preservation. Can be selfishness as well, but it's often fearful preservation, and that becomes the villain of purpose. A life spent kind of protecting instead of pouring out. So Jesus tells a story about, he tells a lot of stories along this line. He tells a story about a man entrusted with a bag of gold. And the idea is that a wealthy man entrusted a few people to manage his resources while he was gone. And he would soon come back, and the three who got various entrustments from him would have to give an account for what they did with their master's resources, which came in the form of bags of gold. So when the master returns, one of the men who he had given 5 bags of gold to, like, here's 5 bags of gold, I'm going to go, and when I come back, you're going to give an account with what you did with my resources. And he comes back, the master comes back, and the man says, you gave me 5 bags of gold, I put it to work, and I doubled it. Here's 10 bags of gold. So the man was entrusted with resources, and he put them to work for the master, and he gives a doubled amount, 10 bags of gold, and the famous words are, well done, good and faithful servant. And then he entrusts him, the master entrusts him with more. I mean, obviously, this person's going to go to work with my stuff and double it, and they're going to give effort, so here's more. And another employee who'd been entrusted with 2 bags of gold presented his master with 4 bags. So one guy gets 5 bags of gold, doubles it. One guy gets 2 bags of gold, doubles it. And here's what the master says. This is in Matthew 25:23. The master says, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful for a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. There's one more servant to give an account. He only got one bag. And he returned with that exact same bag because he didn't do anything with it. He was given a bag, he hid it, and then he brought the master back that same bag. Matthew 25:25 says this, I was afraid, and I went out and hid your gold in the ground. He didn't lose it. He didn't waste it. He didn't misuse it. He just hid it. He buried it. He didn't put it to work because he was afraid. And Jesus gives a jarring reply from the master in the story. It's in 25:26. The master said, you wicked, lazy servant. You wicked, lazy servant. Why such strong language? Because fear didn't lead this man to rebellion. Fear led him to inactivity. And inactivity with God's gift is never neutral. He gave back exactly what he was given, unused. And Jesus says that's not faith, that's mistrust. The issue was not human error. It was not using it in the first place. And this is really important when we think about Ephesians 2:10. When we think about things that God has prepared for us to do with what he's entrusted with us. And this is a story about putting our gifts and resources to work for God. And notice that it wasn't that the man tried and failed. It was that he didn't try. And this is important because we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but we rule ourselves out. We think of all the reasons we shouldn't do something for God. And a lot of it is a fear that we're going to mess up. But nothing suggests that this master would be mad if a person tried and failed. It was about effort. It was about effort. And somehow it's as if not putting the gold to work, not putting our resources to work and doing things and trying things, really as we mistrust ourselves, what we're really doing is we're mistrusting God. It represents really a lack of faith that God could use us more than anything else. When we choose our own security or when we shy away in fear. And I just, I think about whether it's children's ministry, teen ministry, or some other thing where we would say, I could never work in Polaris Kids because I don't know the Bible well enough to teach a 3-year-old. Or I could never interact with middle school students. And it's important when you think about God is calling you to use your gifts, so I don't. You got to use your head in thinking through what you're going to be good at and what you're not going to be good at. But if you're just afraid you're going to mess up and you don't do anything, that's where you get into that area of burying our talents. And the response was, you wicked, lazy servant. So Ephesians 2:10 is this incredible promise, but God takes pretty seriously how we respond to it. All right, let's look at another reason that Jesus talks about. So we got like fear being one, but then there's this idea of sometimes we just want to hoard our resources. So there's a story about a guy who does really well for himself in the farming business, and he has so much yield that he runs out of room to store it, And his first instinct is to build bigger barns, to store more. Luke 12, 18 and 19 says, this is what I'll do. This is the guy that has all the success. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Barns full, full calendar, full of opportunities, full stomach. God interrupts the story. 12:20. God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. And Jesus explains the point. He says, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. The idea of this story isn't that, if you save too much money, God's going to kill you. The idea is we need to think through what we're really after. And make sure that we're not just saving everything for ourselves and avoiding that Ephesians 2:10 stuff that God has called us to. And I think about this because sometimes we avoid serving, whether it be at a church or other God's kingdom stuff, or using our resources to bless others. Sometimes it's because we're afraid that we're going to mess it up or we're not worthy. Other times it's just because it's mine. I think about people that never get involved in anything outside of their own families because they just protect all of their time. I want time for golfing and fishing and family and youth sports, everything, and suburban busyness and activities, and my schedule's full, and it's full of things that are ultimately for me and my family. You can spin it and say you're just living for your family, but when there's never any external kingdom of God, risky, out there stuff that requires something of you beyond just your own benefit, I think we're in danger of that whole idea of hoarding our resources. And this is not to say that we can't have time, and we should have time with family and friends, and time for ourselves, and time for hobbies, and money to do fun things with. But when it's all, like this guy, it was just all about him. And that becomes another villain of purpose. He died with a pretty impressive man cave and an incredible closet full of great clothes, but nothing else in the Ephesians 2:10 realm. Now, let me move on quick because I want to do something else here toward the end of this, but the good side of all this is when we choose to invest what we have, whether it be money, talent, time, passion, energy, in helping others, there's an incredible joy that comes with this. I love this vision of Matthew 25:21, the bags of gold. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. The promise is happiness shared with God. Because they were willing to use the master's resources, master being the God character and the servants being us, we are promised to share in God's happiness. Now, Isaiah 58. Sorry, I need to get away from the microphone when I do that. Dryness, another one of the facts of the season. Yep, you get it. Isaiah 58. We build Polaris around Isaiah 58. If you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness and your night will become like noonday. In the scriptures, when God talks about light, he's often talking about a shared presence, joy, sometimes we feel like serving, giving, sacrificing is going to take away from our life. It's going to be a negative. But on a supernatural level, one of the things you can expect is sharing in the happiness of God when you begin to serve and pour yourself out for others. And so, we have to give ourselves the promotion. If you are doubting Ephesians 2:10 and giving all kinds of excuses as to why you can't, I want to challenge you to give yourself the promotion. Mary Magdalene was demon-possessed, and yet she chose to follow Jesus and become central in his ministry. The same with Matthew, the tax collector, Peter, and John. These were people that were ordinary. They were not qualified. The scriptures are filled with people who are not qualified to be central in the ministry of Jesus, and they had to promote themselves to trust God's call on their life. And this is something that I personally have had to do time and again, because my inner monologue is, you can't do that. You're not good enough. You're not qualified. And if that's where you are with any given ministry, you have got to give yourself the promotion. Okay, now, here's what I want to do with the rest of my time when it comes to Ephesians 2:10 and purpose and challenging yourself to do something for someone. We got a few guys that are fresh off their Costa Rica trip where they went. If you're new to Polaris, we have some missionaries, Chuck and Christy Badley, and they were once out in the Polaris crowd. And they left everything here and moved to Costa Rica to work with children in poverty. And we send mission trips to go serve and see what they're doing. And 4 guys came back. Here's some of their pictures, some of their images. And they're going to come up and share real quick about their week. It's Wayne Lakovic, Chuck Calley, Paul Leakin, and Jim Gallagher. And Los Pinos is the shanty town. Come on up, guys. And I just have a few questions. Yeah. Give it up. We'll see what it's like to, take a risk and step out of your comfort zone and live some, you guys are coming off some Ephesians 2:10 stuff. Yeah, step into the light.
We're not used to light anymore.
No, yeah. So I need one of you to fairly, get about 15 minutes, need one of you to fairly briefly give an overview. I think you said that you was. So Chuck's going to just tell us what you did last week.
Before I start talking, I've been craving Dunkin' Donuts coffee for about a week, and I had a Dunkin' Donuts coffee this morning. So if I start talking very fast, I just drank it super fast. So we went down there. We had a plan that we were going in, that we were going to do some fixing up for the clubhouse. We call it the clubhouse, where the kids come and actually learn and interact with everybody there. And we've been planning for a couple months of what we were actually going to do, fixing up some stuff in the community, fixing up some stuff for the clubhouse itself, and just the environment that the kids would be in. So we went in there. We arrived on Saturday. Sunday, we went and met in the community. We went to one of the neighborhood parks over there and just seeing how the community interacts. And Chuck is very good about not just throwing us right into Los Pinos and seeing exactly what is going on there. It was very much a crawl, walk, run type situation. In the community, we were able to see how these families live and how much different it is than us. We were able to see people interacting with their families, no electronics, just the sense of community there is unbelievable. The next day we went down over to Los Pinos, we went to the clubhouse, just seeing what was going on there, some of the projects that we were tasked to do, and I believe the first day we actually went back into the shanty area and just got a real quick overview of the living conditions of some of these children, some of these families, and what they were doing. Then from there, we started getting into the projects. And the projects, we thought were gonna last us all week, and we were able to knock out most of the projects in the first 2 days. And then the projects expanded from there. We talked about other stuff that we wanted to do. So we were able to do some painting, and you might have seen a picture of some of the cats and things like that. The feral cat community there is just everywhere. The cats would come into the clubhouse, they would go into the kitchen, and granted there's food and everything in there, so we had to keep the cats out. Fixing up some stuff. One of the situations is one of the classrooms back there is just a steel roof. There's no insulation, there was nothing in there. And if you're in the back of this classroom, there's no ventilation in there as well. So you can imagine in our summertime, they're calling their summertime our wintertime, but which is weird because on the north end of the equator. But in the summertime for them, the heat baking down in there just made super uncomfortable conditions for them. So another thing that everybody was able to do was put up insulation, bring the temperature down back there, add lighting to that area back there, because after you added the insulation, you weren't able to really see that much, so we were able to do that. And then just 1,000 small tasks of different things that were going on. Water leaks, plumbing leaks, painting floors. What else am I missing, guys? Sliding glass windows in the kitchen. The roof from the next door person actually was right at the kitchen table, so we had some sliding glass windows in there. And sliding glass windows, I mean just plexiglass that covered it up so that when she's in there cooking, she's not getting soaking wet when it's raining. Fixed furniture, yeah.
Anything we could find.
Yeah, anything we could find. We were able to get back in the community as well. One of the big projects we were going to do, and the best way I could describe it is there's just walking paths back there. There's not roads or anything like that. And the walking paths back there, unfortunately, the infrastructure is not there. So all these shanty community, everything that comes from their sink, everything that comes from their toilets, everything that comes from anything that they dump back there is walking right in their walking paths. And one of the one of the things I wouldn't get used to right away was the children were walking through these walking paths with the water that's coming from all these shanties that are back there. And the smells, Chuck and Christy, when they come up here and talk about it, the smells, I mean, it's something that sticks with you. And then the kids are walking around in sandals or bare feet, but the amount that these kids were just happy that we were there was unbelievable. So, any other projects that I missed? Sorry, this is the team now, so I want to bump it off of everybody.
So Trey, repeat this. Oh, okay. Talk about some of your reservations that you guys had before you went, like just hesitations, reservations, whatever. I'll start with you, Jim. Step into the light a little bit.
Step into the light.
Yeah.
I think the biggest reservation that I had was, are we going to be able to accomplish? Early on, the tasks seems a little overwhelming, and are we going to be able to, going to be able to contribute and keep up? You know, and be able to do this, and be able to do, and honestly, to be able to do this and to come away with, you know, some success.
You know, I'm a proud son of a fixer, right? I grew up with a dad that fixed things and made sure that we were safe and happy, and everything was in order. My biggest fear was, am I going to be able to fix things? And I learned quickly, and fix in Los Pinos is different than fix here, right? My desire for perfection, right? And to safe, right? How do I, so I'm working on electrical wiring and lighting, and I want to make it bright. I want to make this back room bright for the first time and give the kids a place to play and have, fun, bring joy, right? And that room does bring joy. You can't, and I was guided by Chuck early on, think about where they live. They need to feel like where they live, and darkness is part of where they live. So overlight and things like giving too much light and brightness into their world is actually counter to what they need. So my fix isn't their fix. So I had to learn quickly that things like codes and standards are different there. You make them safe as you can, realizing that they're never going to be what we would consider fixed. So I had to give up a little of that. And once I did that, I was able to do more than I thought I could have gotten done. So you have to learn, to be a little bit humble and leave some things undone to get where you need to go. It's kind of humbling.
I think me and Chuck Calley probably had the same fears. You know, you worry about drinking water that has things in it that your body's not used to, or even around food. You know, so both of us were concerned about getting sick. You know, that was the biggest thing.
And then the ladder collapses at the last.
So for me, with like firefighting background, safety is obviously like one of the number one things. And Paul took a nice spill on a ladder that
So,
I was
now,
really.
It was the last use, and it was 6 feet, not the 16 I was using 3 days prior. So it was the last time.
But going down there, the food, the water, communicating, I could get through Spanish. I'm not fluent in Spanish by any means, but it's not like going to Brunswick Home Depot and buying stuff. It's, you have to figure out what it's called, how to pronunciate it, how to tell them what you need, and then some of the logistical stuff of it, like it even showing up at the clubhouse was a miracle in my opinion. There's not addresses. It's not like you could just say, oh, the clubhouse address is this street with this number. It was like, oh, you drive down this road and turn left here and we'll meet you on the right. So some of that was very crazy. And this is my first time actually out of the United States. So that was a whole new fear in itself. I just didn't, know the logistics behind it of traveling outside the United States. So.
All right, one more thing. I'm going to combine the last two things I told you guys about. Like, what was your biggest takeaway in terms of your own relationship with Jesus from this? And maybe close second, like a similar question. So biggest takeaway and how it will impact your friendship with Jesus, and then you're thinking about what matters and what doesn't in life.
Early on, or at some point during our week, we started talking about different things. And we had gone and we had visited a park that had been talked about, and it was phenomenal. It was an open park. There were families everywhere. There weren't a lot of cell phones. People were talking, people were laughing, children running everywhere. They were playing football, they were playing, soccer. They were playing their football. They were flying kites, they were playing tennis. But the bigger thing that struck me was the one day we were sitting in the front of the clubhouse with a group of children, girls, that were going to camp. And one of the younger girls, Mia, went down to the local store and got a bag of plantains. And she took them over and was sharing them. Now these people have nothing. I don't even know where she got the money to do this. She went down and she was sharing them with her friends. We were across the street, which you can see or not, in front of the clubhouse, and as soon as she saw Chuck, she's across the street hugging him, giving, they're talking, and she hands him a handful of the chips. She looks at us, goes back down to the store, buys another bag of chips, comes up to us, 4 complete strangers, and goes around and hands each one of us a bag of chips. We are here, we're a me nation. It's all about us, it's all about me, it's what I can accumulate, it's what you talked about putting in the barn. Down there, they're a we nation. And they're happy. Yep. That to me was probably, one other incident that I won't go into right now, but that to me was probably the most profound thing that I took away from that.
She had one chip left. After she gave them away, she had one. plantain.
For me, there were two people that I think about quite a bit. One is Brian. Brian's a gentleman that works for Ed Plus, which is an agency and as well as Love Pure. I thought he was 18. He's 30 years old, almost 30 years old. Yeah, and when on day one, when the girls in the community were they had an opportunity to go to a week-long camp, and they were all gathered out in front of Love Pure, and Brian comes up, and in a world where there are no male figures of presence, right? Most homes don't have a male figure in them unless they're in the gangs, and a couple do, but predominantly it's a matriarchal society, right? Brian comes up the street, and it was like watching Jesus bring lambs together. I mean, this man has such an open connection with the community, particularly the young girls. For the first time, they have a role model that's not leaving home to go into the drug trades, or abusing, or just sitting in the corner heckling us for doing works, right? The men were more heckling us for working than realizing what we're doing, which is fine. But Brian was just that magnet, and the second is Mauricio. Day 4, I'm up on the ladder just trying to make this, trying to get the lighting right, and I'm focused. And Mauricio's under the ladder saying, pool. He wants to play pool on this little table. He beat us all, right? Turns
Might have
out,
been a little cheating going on, I'm just saying.
but
More than a little.
but he was the most affectionate, open, and then later I hear him and Chuck talking at the table. He sits down. He's the little squirt. He's maybe 40 pounds soaking wet. And he's just talking to Chuck, and they're having this deep conversation back and forth. And so you see moments like that of hope, and that hope comes from male figures that step up in the community and be present. And as fathers, you think of what we try to do. They're doing it in a world that just is completely against that culture, that place for being a paternal instinct, and it was pretty impressive. Those two individuals, Mauricio and Brian, will always kind of be in my head, represent what Los Pinos is, what the work of Love Pure is. It's about bringing the presence back and hope to the community, and they do it in those little tiny ways.
One of the things I thought when I went down there is that you got this delusions of grandeur that you're going to go down there and you're going to make this big difference, And one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to see Mia, because I had a photo of her, when Chuck brought those up to us, we put them in our house and we prayed for those kids. So, I get to see Mia, donde está Mia? She comes up to me, and I said to her, Tango, una foto, you in mi casa. So I have a photo of you in mi casa. And she kind of looks at me, and she's like 11 or 12-year-old girl, right? And she kind of did one of these. So I got this shirt on today, it's Godzilla. I'm the 6'4" scary white guy down there, right? So she did what you would expect a girl to do. She look, you got a picture of me in your house, so it wasn't a reaction I thought I'd get. I thought I'd get somebody that's like, oh my gosh, that's great, I'm so happy, and she really wasn't, she was kind of scared about it. And just kind of realized that it's not about me, it wasn't about us going down there and we're doing some great things. God was over and over putting in my heart that we're tools, we're down there literally as tools to do his work. We could not do anything down there if Chuck and Christy Badley hadn't gone down there and made themselves part of that community, and they have completely ingrained themselves in that community. There are so many people coming to them, and saying, hey Chuck, and giving them hugs and love and speaking in Spanish to them. They're totally a fabric of that community now. One of the other things we had was me and Chuck were up on the roof, and some adolescent boys go by and they go, "Hey, gringo," you know, and that was a slur, you know, directed towards us. And, you know, you could, you know, respond and saying something snotty back, right? And we just kind of said, you know, "Hola, ¿qué tal?" You know, "How are you?" You know, "Hello," and just let it slide. And then on the last day, as we were in the community, Debbie Wentz had bought some bracelets for, you know, for the women here at Polaris, and I had them in my hand. And this little boy, he's about this tall, knee-high to a grasshopper, is going, "Gringo, gringo," you know, and he comes running up to me and he's pointing at the bracelets, and you know, Chuck says, you know, "Por favor," you know, say please, and so I gave him one of the bracelets and just said to him, it's like, you know, "No gringo, you know, soy tu amigo, I'm your friend," you know, and you know, all those opportunities we wouldn't have had to interact with that you know, community if it wasn't for what Chuck and Christy had already done. We're tools of God to engage with that community, and that's the whole thing. We're just there to try to make it, you know, be a blessing to them and help them find a way to survive in that poverty. And you know, it certainly wasn't about us. It was definitely about God, and that's what God was teaching me. It's not about Wayne.
Wayne was the Pied Piper in the community. The kids, he'd start engaging the kids, and it was funny to watch him look down. I mean, he had to look down on everyone, but you know, they're looking up, probably the largest person in the community by bar none.
Maybe in the country.
Maybe in the country, yeah, based on the doors and all the other stuff, and the beds. Yeah, but it was awesome to see.
So I guess for me, the biggest thing was it definitely changed my perspective, just perspective on life. And everything that I've ever learned was to be poor is financially poor, and you just don't have the money. You just don't have this. But I've learned down there that you could be poor in so many other aspects of your life, whether it be faith, security, outlook in life, future, all these different things. There's so many other different variations of poor that I just wasn't aware of. And where we may be financially poor, I've seen people down there that are so much more rich in faith and community that we just don't have here. I've never seen it like it is there. And it absolutely just changed my perspective on everything that was going on. So.
Well, thank you guys, and well done.
Thanks.
You represented us and Jesus well. So I'm going to try to close this in 1 minute. First of all, remember that, like, not to toot our own horns, but it's important for us as a congregation, as a church, to realize, like, that's all, like that. Obviously, that's God, that's Chuck and Christy, but like, we sent Chuck and Christy. We have provided our Christmas Eve offerings for their budget every year for all that stuff. We bought the clubhouse. Like, that's all our collective generosity that God has used in a pretty big way there. So that's some pretty meaningful reporting there. Also, if you want to take a step in the Ephesians 2:10 thing, and you're like, yeah, okay, I need to start using my gifts and serving, and you're not real sure where to start, I'm happy to talk with you about it, but start with our app. Go to the towel section in our app, and that's all the things we have going, places where you could get plugged in and start serving. You'll be fully trained, and even if it's just to ask more questions about what it means, use the app to find spaces where there's needs, and that's a great way to take a first step in that. Okay, I'm going to pray quick, and then you are dismissed. God, thank you for a safe trip last week. Thank you for the work that Chuck and Christy are doing there. Pray that you'd continue to bless it. I want to pray that everybody here today would hear Ephesians 2:10 as truth for their life, and they would respond with confidence. They would give themselves the promotion that you have given them and trust you in your calling, trust in their own resources that you've given them, and ideas and inspiration to use them for your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen